And my father would always tell me, when your mom was pregnant with you, I met Ray and I told him I'm going to call my son Appu. So cinema had always been in my blood because my parents met when Sholay released in the cinema hall in 75 or 76 when it came out.
Just to start things off, I wanted to ask you a bit about the earliest part of your filmmaking journey with Satya and how you got into all of it. One of the things I was reading about you was that you were one of the youngest people to receive the Filmfare Award for an editor, the best editor. So I want to understand why filmmaking happened, how it happened initially, and you got into a project like Satya at the beginning itself. What was your thoughts like? Were you intimidated? And क्या चल रहा था उस time पे?
Yeah, I mean, intimidated I am even today before I start anything. That hasn't changed. And I hope it doesn't change. I was more confident then than I am today. I'll be more cautious today. But when you have that kind of youth on your side, 15, I was 15, 16 years old when I started work in television and subsequently film. So, you have that very cocky kind of self-confidence where you can achieve anything because your whole life is ahead of you. And so I think that fueled me back in the day. I mean, it is a daunting prospect when you work with someone like a Ram Gopal Verma, because he had made films that I had loved before that, and various genres of films. Like he had made Shiva on college politics and violence. He had made Raat with Revati, which was I think still till today, one of the most chilling horror films I've seen. He had made Rangila, which brought A.R. Rahman to Hindi cinema, and various other things which, CDs had just come out and all back in the day. I had actually seen Ram Gopal Verma and his crew shooting Rangila, Amir Khan, Urmila Matondkar at this amusement park in Bombay, which doesn't exist now. It was called Fantasyland. I don't know if anyone knows Fantasyland here. So Fantasyland was quite a place to go, and somebody who's 15, 16 years old, all those rides were like super exciting. I wasn't really thinking cinema as much as I was thinking of the roller coaster, which eventually is cinema. So I reached this place with my family, and somewhere in the this thing, while we were waiting to board a ride, and in fact, I was irritated because that one roller coaster I wanted to use had been closed because Amir Khan and Ram Gopal Verma and Urmila were shooting there. So obviously, once I discovered that they were shooting there, I left everything and started watching them. Just the whole process of how they were putting it together, I found very fascinating. And then the movie came out, I think 95, 96, I'm not sure. And when it came out, when I saw it, and then I saw that scene that I had been at Fantasyland, and I saw how it had come about and how music was added and how close-ups were added and reactions that happened. And I said, my God, this is really magic what these people do, because I had been there on the set. So I started to harbor a desire to understand this magic of filmmaking. And I started very early, in my college only, we had this Kida putting people together to do like college festivals based on handicam pe jo shoot kiya or edit kiya, that kind of thing. And one festival I only organized, I only got best director. So that's but still
Pat on your own back.
At Jai Hind College, my alma mater. Some of the judges were noted film and ad people. When I won, I started talking to them, and MTV, which is just launching in India, on a 2-hour band on Doordarshan, believe it or not, came to interview me after that. And I felt a little bit like a celebrity, and I felt like I'm a filmmaker now. So I approached each one of those judges, one of who was a man who produced the first countdown show, Bollywood song countdown show for Channel V, which had just launched. MTV actually, and then Channel V, called BPLOA. I actually pestered this judge and said, please give me a job. I want to assist you. And I used to do that to everybody from the film and TV industry, whoever I met. Please give me a chance to assist you. Please give me a chance to assist you. So he gave me a chance to kind of work for him. They didn't have to pay me. So when they were shooting, if they wanted me to go buy oranges for the shoot or this or that, I was running around. But I got first-hand experience on the set. I was called a production assistant. My name appeared in the credits of the thing. And that started out. a career. Then I got into a company that did promos for movies, and it was an easier place to get in, and I had a creative kind of a bent towards reshaping something. I realized during that. And as I was doing promos for a company subsequent to this job, this man named Ram Gopal Verma came to this company, brought the promos, I mean, the material of his film called Dod, which was after Rangila, which was a madcap movie with Urmila Matondkar and Sanjay Dutt. Just went hammer and tongs and please let me do it, let me do it, let me do it. I'll work day, night, don't pay me, whatever. So I started to do those promos, completely determined to meet this guy because I remembered the Rangila shoot at Fantasyland, and he was the reason I was sitting in that studio. And I kept when editing it, seeing his face, his reaction, imagining his reaction. And sure enough, the day came, and he watched it, and he reacted with like superlatives, and really liked it, and he liked my take. And then he just completely like took me on. Where are you going? Oh, you're going to Andheri? I'm driving there. Come with me. And then telling me about this, that you want to stop by at the studio? So of course, just stop at the studio, and then he will show me little material from Dod only that was being shot at the time. So that's how it began. And then he told me just one day like this in the car, he said, Apurva, he's talking to me, I'm making a film. And you don't know where he's looking, whatever, because he was always in his own head, Ram Gopal Verma. And out of the blue, he said, so he asked, he said, I'm thinking of, editing this on, what do you edit on? So I said, it's Avid, Ramoji. It's this new technology where earlier we were cutting on film directly. Now it had been digitized, So I told him about Avid. He said, well, wherever you want to cut it, you cut it. So that's how he actually proposed Satya to me, just randomly. So I was just like, if this man who is so brilliant has that faith in me, why should I not?
I mean, I got a sense that you were pretty street smart back then, pretty jugadu, and trying to find out ways get your what you want in the right manner, in the best manner possible for you. I want to understand, does it still work? I mean, this kind of reaching out to people or pitching yourself. Not for me, I'm just asking in general because we hear stories here and there of people who randomly get into touch with people. And is it something that still works? And the second part of the question is also to understand what was your mind frame back then with regards to making films? Like, did you just want to meet him, or did you have an idea that मुझे आगे जाके फिल्में ही बनानी है? Or where were you at when 15, 16, 17, that age was there? What were you thinking about in terms of cinema as a medium and for yourself as a career prospect?
So the first part of your question, it's a no-brainer. It's the only thing that I feel works is passion, determination, and the kind of optionless determination. There's nothing else, basically. I pretty much started to falter for my studies while doing Satya, my junior college. I completed, but the moment I was starting my FIBA and stuff like that, I found that I was far more interested in being on the Satya set and the Satya editing, because I also assisted Ramoji. I actually said to him, I want to assist you. It didn't matter. If he had said you be the umbrella on the set, I would be. It was just any kind of fly on the wall kind of experience also. I was going to take anything at that point in time because I was determined. And I have a feeling that when you are that determined and you're willing to give up anything else, like you're left with no choice. If I don't have a degree, if my father is ready to throw me out of the house because I haven't completed my education the way he would have wanted me to, then obviously you got to be dead sure, right? And that dead sureness, I think, is the attractive quality in this mix. I don't think people are necessarily looking for somebody who knows cinema and who knows how to do it. If you do, then why are they there? It's more than anything, it's to get passionate team players on board. And whose passion you can all feed off each other's. Plus a reasonably aware, intelligent mind that can question. And I've never been one that minds his P's and Q's. I don't know if anybody follows me on Twitter. I'm quite, I have never been somebody who's said what people necessarily want to hear. And I think that is very important in filmmaking because, the more yes men you have, on a project, the worse it gets, because you can say, oh, I'm making the world's greatest thing and this is the world's greatest shot, and it can be complete shit. And if somebody doesn't question it, then you end up working in isolation and making something very indulgent. So yeah, there was another part to your question. So I'm very blessed because my father was a film buff and he saw international cinema, and not just international cinema, he watched regional cinema as well. So he loved Bengali films a lot. He had met Satyajit Ray, his idol, because he used to fly for an airline and he was doing operating an international flight, and sitting in first class was Satyajit Ray. So my father, even if I lose my job, I'm just sitting here and asking you every question that comes to my mind. And he had watched every single film from Apur Sansar to his later films like my pronunciation may not be right, so Bengali people, please forgive me. Yeah, but Gaire Baire, and then the whole the trilogy, of course, Mahanagar, and Jalsa Ghar, films like this, which are great films. So I grew up watching these films. And my father would always tell me, when your mom was pregnant with you, I met Ray and I told him I'm going to call my son Opu. So cinema had always been in my blood because my parents met when Sholay released in the cinema hall in 75 or 76 when it came out. And my mother came from a very conservative family and my father was this Bombay boy, mother South Indian girl in Bangalore. And their courtship began there in the cinema. They would sneak out to go to the movies, watch, because she was not allowed to, obviously, meet someone very conservative. And so they actually fell in love at the movie. So I made some music videos based on this.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
Yeah, Tera Mera Pyar and Ye Kya Hua for Sony Music.
Yeah.
And that was actually a tribute to my parents. It came 4 days before their anniversary in 2005, I think.
Yeah.
So cinema has always been something that I find very intriguing and a great vehicle to transport thoughts and ideas across, and for people to kind of question their reality, not just for entertainment, I just knew that I had to learn this language and to be able to tell stories that I felt like were not being told. For me, this is all that really matters, For me, it's really not about telling a story that's already been told really well and really cleverly and making a lot of money and getting a lot of wawa based on that. A story, not about the mise en scène and all of that. For me, that story is sacred. Every government that comes into power, not getting political here, will have certain agendas. They will have a certain kind of politics that says, okay, these kind of stories can't be told. And they ban, like in the previous government, banned anything on the emergency or on that Nasbandi thing that Sanjay Gandhi had done. Right? Fair enough. That is the way they are going to run this country and whatever. We didn't have Twitter and all to react so strongly to it then. But during emergency and stuff like that, there were a lot of people that were imprisoned. A lot of free speech was arrested. People were arrested, for saying the simplest things and all that. But those stories were never told, So I grew up wondering why these stories are not being about being homosexual and the gay experience. That is also a story. I never saw that story told. And it was something that it just didn't sit right inside of me, which is probably what I wanted to do.
So you have done different genres since the beginning, from Satya and other films with Hansal Mehta as well. Earlier, one film with Hansal Mehta, and then you also did this couple of music videos. And you then have also done Shahid, Aligarh, and Simran, and then now you did recently did Criminal Justice. I want to understand from your point of view, what is an Apurva Asrani film? What is it that attracts you most towards a certain project, and what is it like? Is there some commonality that exists in something with regards to what aspects of a film or what aspects of a theme of a film attract you?
I mean, initially you're experimenting, right? And I think it's very important to do that. You're attempting all sorts, So after I did Satya, I did a film called Snip, which was this black comedy that fetched me the National Award for editing. It had a lot of English in it, and it had some very interesting casting: Makran Deshpande, Saurabh Shukla, Sophia Haq, Nikhil Chinnappa. And the comedy was a little bizarre out there, way ahead of its time. Then I did a movie called Jai Jagdish, where Anupam Kher directed it, which had the biggest stars of the time, Anil Kapoor, Abhishek Bachchan, Fardeen Khan. At that time, they were all that. I was like, okay, chalo, mainstream cinema and whatever. I did a film called Out of Control, which had a Baywatch babe. It was like a two films I did for this producer. I was excited about trying different genres, thinking that maybe I could crack, something, in every genre or whatever. But then success, failure, they both teach you. I think failure teaches you more. I kind of came to the understanding, and I took a break from cinema, completely took a break from cinema after Out of Control and Om Jai Jagdish. I was very hard on myself. I went and I introspected. I went and became an editor of a portal, a web portal, where I was writing pieces, and I had a team of writers working for me. And I moved to Bangalore and all of that. Till Hansal Mehta called me back. I had worked with him on a film called Chal earlier. He said, "Look, I'm planning this film." It's called Based on a True Story, then the film. And had this young new actor called Rajkumar Yadav, who became Rajkumar Rao. And there was this poster that he sent to me that had my name on it as editor. Anurag Kashyap was producing it. And it was all like an old team of people suddenly coming back and pulling me out of like an exile and saying, "Come here." And it had to be something so powerful, like Shahid. The film became Shahid, for me to leave everything and go back to that world. While doing that film, and like kind of I became a co-writer on that film, while working on the screenplay and kind of, thinking of different ways to tell the story and diving deep into that character and his life. I think it hit upon me then that I am best suited to doing stuff that's based on true stories, that is based from something within society that needs to come out and to be discussed. A discourse needs to begin. Like those kind of stories started to excite me much more. I did a film on the Pakistan-Bangladesh war called Children of War, which was about the rape camps in Bangladesh, where, the way that, the Pakistani forces wanted to infuse their culture into Bangladesh that they had invaded, so to speak, was through impregnating the women, and it was a true story, but nobody tells this story because it's an uncomfortable story to tell. So when there was a young filmmaker, new filmmaker said, "Okay, I don't have the money and I don't have the experience, but I have the story. Please, I want you to be part of it." I said, "Of course, this is the kind of story I want to tell." Then we did a film called City Lights, which was about the migrant issue in Bombay. Things that you read in the papers that scream out, but you've not deep dived into it. Then we did Aligarh, which is again based on a true story. Then we did Simran, which is also based on a true story. I wrote Criminal Justice Behind Closed Doors, which is based on marital rape and, something that we are still grappling with. It's part of public discourse. And even the new stuff that I'm working on. So somewhere I think, if you've been able to stick around long enough, it becomes clear to you what is it that you're most suited towards. I get very bored of, I get very excited at the beginning when the subject is purely for entertainment and people are having fun. There's good aesthetics and all of that. I enjoy it, but I can't sustain my interest in it.
I may be reading too much into it, but I have a theory that maybe your penchant for telling real stories comes from your background as an editor, because then you have like a lot of events and then you have to decide like which events you want to shortlist to and present. So my question to you is that when it comes to the part of framing, like when you're making an adaptation and you're picking like which events to show and what events not to show, then are you hyper conscious and very uncomfortable about the bias of your perspective? Or is it something that you accept and you work with it like regardless, like you have made peace with the bias that inherently comes when you're telling a real story in 2 hours on film? And one more question, like could you just suggest 3 films whose editing you really admire?
First of all, I think that we are unique prisms, and you can give each of us the same story or the same truth, and we will interpret it different. And that's a very important thing, which is why sometimes you can be talking about the same thing, but have such completely different, diverse films that have different kind of insights that you take home from it, right? So that is that prism, which you can also call the bias, right? But I think that is essential to the birthing of an original story. But the completion of it, I think every good writer has to be a good editor, or at least respect and value the process of editing in his or her script or their script. When you put on the hat of an editor, and I'm not even talking about actually editing the film later on, I'm talking about editing your script. You've put everything out there, that you believe in. What are you leaving people with? What are you leaving the audience with? Is it at the end of the day, have you evolved, or are you at the same place that you began your journey with the script? If you have evolved, if you have asked several questions, dissected it from various angles, most often you come to the conclusion, at least I do, that I actually know nothing. I thought I knew about the subject. I know nothing. Look at Shahid, look at Aligarh. Okay, both these films, okay, the end is the open-ended, the inconclusive. There is no villain. There is no face that you can call the villain. There's nobody who can say it's you. You see, but when I started out with Aligarh, I knew for a fact that there were people within Aligarh Muslim University who had it in for Professor Siras. They wanted him out, and they played politics, So I had written these characters, and somewhere while we even shot it, when I saw it on the editing table, luckily I was editing it, I saw it on the editing table. I was like, shit, this guy is looking like a bad guy. And which means that the audience at the end is going to say, isi ne kiya. He's the bad guy. Hum theek hai. So we make a villain. And it's very easy when you make a villain to completely forget your own biases and your own involvement in the crime of homophobia. Right? So by the end of the film, I don't think you saw my biases. Or at least I would hope so. Because my bias would have been till a point that vice chancellor of that university has masterminded this whole damn thing. Then the fact that he's a Muslim, this man is a Hindu, everything can take on various colors within our society, various hues. The effort is to dissolve those biases by the end. 3 movies it's very hard. Whenever I ask this question, I am completely foxed. So I will say something that I'll regret later, but I'll say it anyway. So there is a film called Reincarnation of Peter Proud, a film which Karz, the Hindi film Karz about reincarnation, was based on Subhash Ghai's film. So Reincarnation of Peter Proud is brilliant editing, because there's a guy who reaches this town and he begins to feel like he's been here before and he's seen things before. So how you are able to generate an image that is evoking something but not necessarily telling you the whole picture, I thought that was genius of that film. Similarly, Fight Club, I thought was very well edited, which also had a very similar kind of subliminal kind of thing through editing. It was very clever. I love almost all the films of this Indian editor who is my guru in a sense, Renu Saluja. Parinda was brilliantly edited. Party, a film that she did, was brilliantly edited. Jane Bhi Do Yara was brilliantly edited. So, many of these films don't draw attention to the editing, but nevertheless are such brilliantly narrated stories. And you can kind of see, if you have a trained mind, that, what could have gone over or under and how it has been controlled.
Just to ask you this, because I don't understand this properly as just a viewer of cinema, what is a good edit? And were you somebody who, आपको शुरू से ही, did you try to grab or understand editing पहले से, like when you were watching films as a kid as well, like कि edit कैसे हुआ है, and when did that technical understanding begin?
I think the technical understanding of it began much later. I think it was when I was 15, 16, when I saw the Rangila shoot, and then I saw how it had come together. I realized that, it can be such a cut and dry process, absolutely lackluster, what you're watching on a set. And it's really lackluster. But when you actually watch it on screen, and you see the camera track, and you see that close-up that they cut to, and the background music swells and all of that, that's when you understand the magic of cinema. So I started to then watch stuff, from that kind of perspective, to understand, where the magic actually has been applied to it, you know. And then when I started doing promos, the music video contest that I won, I actually shot street children, and that was the theme about, poverty, street children and stuff like that, because Bombay had a lot of, that. And I took a home video camera, which I borrowed from my uncle. And I went and shot it. Now I don't know. Now I've done it. How do I edit it? So I taught myself editing from one VCR to another VCR, to two cassette tapes. One had everything I'd shot. And then I would play it and I would record it here. And then I would rewind to that other shot. And I would play it and I would at the right time press record here. So it would come together, and that's how I made that music video, which won. So yeah, I taught myself.
I loved the film Aligarh. I loved the dialogues. I have specific question about that movie. जैसे डॉक्टर सीरियस जैसे कहते हैं कि कविता शब्दों के अंतराल में होती है, साइलेंसेस में होती है, पॉजेस में होती है, और मुझे पूरी फिल्म उसी तरह से लगी कि ये मूवी भी उसी साइलेंसेस पॉजेस में दिखाई गई है। जैसे कि डॉक्टर सीरियस एक कोई एक सीन है, वहां पे गुनगुनाते रहते हैं गाना, और आपकी नजरों में समझा, और वो थोड़ी देर के लिए रुक जाते हैं, वो सैड हो जाते हैं, गाना चलते रहता है बैकग्राउंड में, और वो काफी लंबा शॉट है जिसमें ना कोई डायलॉग है ना कुछ है, पर हमें वो इमोशंस समझ में आते हैं कि डॉक्टर सीरियस किस इमोशन से गुजर रहे हैं, उनकी मेंटल स्टेट थोड़ी बहुत झलक जाती है। तो ये एज अ स्क्रिप्ट राइटर पर्दे पे हमको तो दिखाई देता है, बट हाउ डू यू ट्रांसलेट दीज इमोशंस वाया स्क्रिप्ट एज, एंड हाउ डू यू सेल इट टू अ डायरेक्टर? आई मीन हाउ यू टेल इट टू अ डायरेक्टर कि ये इस तरह से बनेगा। जो डायलॉग्स है इसमें बहुत ही चुनिंदा डायलॉग्स है, पर बहुत सारी बड़ी बड़ी बातें कह जाते हैं। सो हाउ इज योर राइटिंग प्रोसेस? हाउ डू यू राइट दोज सीन्स? There's long pauses, long silences, but they say a lot.
I don't know how, sometimes you just feel that क्या auto writing बोलते हैं ना, auto writing, when the ghost comes and possesses you and it just flows and you're like, what, who wrote this, it's like that. So I don't know if I want to take so much credit for it, because you see, filmmaking is a very collaborative kind of a process, the most collaborative art form, where it's never one person's perspective that you are seeing, no matter what anybody would like you to believe, so you definitely create a character that is unique, because it comes from, with Aligarh especially, it came from the fact that, for decades I was almost 35 when I wrote that film, and I was very frustrated, with the fact that you and I are not equal, or people that I'm sitting with and conversing with, we are not equal. I could have worked very hard. I could have put in a lot of effort. I can be the right person for the job, whatever, but still a person sitting in front of me can completely disrespect me and disqualify me based on my sexual preference and my sexual leanings. And also how it works is people are probing, आप ये कौन है आपका, आप इनके कौन लगते हैं, साथ में क्यों रहते हैं, those kind of things, right? So there was a lot of frustration because of that, and that is what actually compels you to get up and write something. So how there is Therav, how there is space in that, it's because the Professor Sirus, that when I researched Professor Sirus, I found him very unlike any activist or any person who even wears an identity of homosexual, queer, yes, no, the vocabulary did not exist for him. He was a very private man. People who knew him, he would open up. Otherwise, he would apna rasta dekh ke wo chalte the. It was that kind of a person. Then, whatever accounts I found from people who knew him, they all seemed to say certain things about how he was shy in places, and or jab he knew you, he was like completely the opposite of shy. So how do you take all these things on and realize at some point in time that you have to do justice to that character. And what if there's a character, see, I, for example, I've been very vocal about gay rights, equal rights, and all of those things. But what if there's somebody who is not at all concerned with that? His concern is just, mujhe akela chhod do. That's it.
Correct.
So that became the thing that was driving all of us. Hansal Mehta, the director, Manoj Bajpayee, the actor, and me and Ishani, my co-writer, all of us, we were understanding this unique thing about Professor Siras. So while writing it as well, there was, that you don't have to say too much in words, because this man does not want to say. This man wants to be. So then you have to basically write moments and sequences where the world around him is saying a lot, is deciding for him. Proctor ho, ye ho, pura faculty ho, journalists ho, ye ho. So everyone's deciding for him. Activists, आपको करना पड़ेगा, आपको, आप poster boy बनिए इसके, मतलब, अभी भी ये law change हुआ है. अगर आप आके, मतलब, लड़ेंगे इसको, लोगों को प्रोत्साहन मिलेगा, ये मिलेगा, वो. People are constantly egging him on, right? So this man is almost like so nice that I'll do it. Okay, fine, I'll do it. I don't understand what gay means, but it's going to help you. Okay, I'll do it. He never went in to say कि मैं university को सबक सिखाऊंगा or whatever. And I thought that was a very interesting, very humane kind of a person. So writing, coming back to say, Aapki Nazaron ne samjha, you write 2 or 3 lines in a script. You write, Professor Siras is back home after his shopping. He's alone for the first, like he's alone, tired. The curtains are drawn. He pours himself a whiskey. Okay. And he plays a Lata Mangeshkar song. And he looks into the mirror, and in his mannerisms, you can understand that he is transported. That's it. That's all. And the rest is Manoj Bajpayee, Hansal Mehta, the DOP who's shooting the film, Satya and Nagpal. When Manoj is doing what he's doing, Satya is composing the shot to the new moment that Manoj is bringing in there, without saying, iske liye maine light nahi kiya. He'll do it. He's ready. Manoj Bajpayee is flying. We are not going to interrupt this flight. And Hansal Mehta is not saying cut. And when the edit, it comes to me again to edit the film. I'm putting it together. I'm saying, okay, chalo, we have only like 90 seconds for this sequence. So मैं इसको ऐसे काटता हूँ. And we cut it 90 seconds. Like shit, it's not doing justice to Manoj Bajpayee. Chal Apu, इसको थोड़ा और बढ़ा दे, Hansal says. 2.5 minutes. Till you keep it in its entirety, it's not working. And that's how it emerges, these things.
When you write a character, like when you are writing for Aligarh, I'm sure that you must not be confirmed that Manoj Bajpayee sir will be doing that character or not. But still you write each and every small things about the character. I just wanted to learn what's the perspective of your writing.
Yeah, you're right. Manoj came in later after I had finished a couple of drafts. I never really think of an actor when I'm writing. In fact, it works. Usually it limits my imagination, because you see, when you write for an actor, then you already know how far their actor can go, what are the things that they can do well. There are some actors who will not be able to play a grassroots person who is not from the privileged elite. There are some actors who are very good with a certain kind of, emotional range. Some are far more physical. So I find like, why limit your character? Your character is bigger than the actor. Audience might not see it like that. For audience, jo dikhta hai, wo bikhta hai. So the audience, even today, when we are out, I see Manoj, whatever, they come and tell him, aapka wo line, wo dialogue, Manoj ji, कि Kavita Antaral mein, Manoj ji, I'm standing right next to him, right? But it doesn't occur to the person that somebody's written that character. That's the audience, right? That's not something that we cannot really change. But we need to know, I feel, that the character is bigger than the actor. The story is bigger than the film. This is my perspective. Everyone, there are different directors who think differently, different writers, right? And I'll tell you why I think. When you're writing it, it's limitless what you can give this character. And so much of it comes from your own imagination, from your own lived experience. Yeah. Do I base it somewhat on people that I know? Is also something that you were asking me? Yes. From time to time, I do. I need to check my character against a real human being and see, is it holding? Can I imagine this happening with a real person? So then I'll put my uncle, who drinks whiskey and listens to Lata Mangeshkar, or I have this person who's constantly probing and kya ho raha hai yahan pe, tumhare ghar mein kya ho raha hai, ye ho raha hai, wo ho raha hai, whatever. So then you kind of somewhere start putting those characteristics into it, but yet this is not defined by that person. There are characteristics from that person that have come into it. I feel that is very liberating for a writer, and I refuse, like even now when they tell me, when I picture a story idea to them, kaun dikh raha hai? Mujhe isme Pankaj Tripathi dikhta hai. Aapko Pankaj, I said, don't tell me what you're seeing now. Let me write it. Let me write it, and then you decide what you want, and then you say, okay, we've got Pankaj Tripathi, here's the script. Now make it more towards, I'm happy to do that. Like after Manoj came in and he read it, Apu aisa karte hai, waisa karte hai, ye karte hai, wo karte hai. We talks, discussions, arguments, whatever. We took on board a lot of such things. Even Kangana, to a certain extent, with Simran. Yeah, there was a point during this process where she was actually a very fun collaborator. Even Simran, I didn't write with her in mind. It was based on a true story about a girl who robbed banks across the west coast of America, Gujarati girl. Supposed to be a younger girl, 23 years old. But when Hansal had access to Kangana Ranaut, who we thought was, she had done Queen and Tanuwad's Manu, one of the best actresses at the time, right? We jumped to it, and now she had to become older because Kangana was already 29 or whatever her age was at that point in time. And more than age, it's also the kind of experience that shows on your face. So I had to start changing a lot of things based on her involvement into the film. So it became something different. But the source, when I was writing it, it was written purely as somebody I was imagining based on the true character. But I've lived in England for 8 years, Indian person living there. What is life like there? What is the Asian community like there? All of those. So those are the things that you take from your own life and you put into the character. And just for the record, I feel like, if Simran had shaped up more like how we had originally intended it, Simran was also meant to be a film about vulnerability, about a woman who is not some saint that we put on a pedestal. She's a human being. She has flaws. She fucks up, and she pays the price for it. And I felt that at the time. I said, we are objectifying women in our films, or we are pedestalizing them so much that if any woman in real life doesn't match up to that pedestalization, we immediately discredit.
Particularly about Shahid, there is a courtroom scene, and it looks very much real. So you want to tell something about that? How was the process of writing that?
So most of the research for Shahid was done by the screenplay writer Sameer Gautam Singh, who actually went into courtrooms and stuff like that and did a lot of research. And we went in at a much later stage before we were about to stage it. And what everybody realized is that, courtrooms are actually some of the most boring places to be. They don't have the drama that you see in film. People are extremely casual. The lawyers are not necessarily people who come in saying कि ये केस मैं जीत के रहूंगा, इससे मतलब समाज सुधर जाएगा. Another man says कि मैं किसी भी हाल में इसको हरा कर रहूंगा, and it's not like that, I mean, it was a revelation that, it's so casual. The other revelation was that, your two lawyers, they might be opposing each other. Your defense, your prosecution might be opposing each other when during the argument, but they're sitting and sharing their tiffin after that and talking about, okay, how's your wife? And wo ulcer theek hoga uska, and all of that. And that victim there is wondering that, or the person accused is wondering, oh my God, he's friends with this one. We were kind of able to see and reimagine a courtroom in a more realistic manner. And that was Shahid's triumph, I feel. And a lot of credit again, and with a lot of Hansal Mehta films, I'll tell you this. I think, what he does is his magic trick is to cast the most interesting, unusual actors, but good actors, to put together a crew that knows what it's doing and to say, okay, here's the thought of the scene. These are mota the dialogues, but ab kuch bhi karo. Because he knows that you've ingested it, right? So then the actors start flying, right? And sometimes as an editor, it can be very frustrating to get Hansal Mehta footage because it's volumes of actors improvising, but there somewhere is the magic. Because once they cross that line, that barrier of, okay, we are performing and we have to say these lines, and they start, flying into improvising, a lot of real moments take place. And so Shahid had a lot of improvisation. Because the film was a low budget. Nobody can believe that Shahid was an 80 lakh rupee film. 80 lakhs in the year 2012, I think, when it came out. We started it in 2010 or whatever. But 80 lakhs was nothing, and then you have a film that has courtrooms, has a young Shahid who gets involved in some riots and then goes to some Mujahideen camp and then comes back, and you see him aging and, him getting older, his life story and all of that in 80 lakhs, because it was all shot digitally. We shot a lot of it on a camera called the 5D camera, which we don't use in film anymore. We'll use far more superior cameras. But at that point in time, there was no money, there was no budget, there was no subject like this, like nobody could even imagine. Nobody's making, this kind of stuff. LSD had been made, which was Diwakar Banerjee's film, which I found extremely interesting, where he kind of used digital footage and edited it in a very nice way. Namrata Rao was the editor. So somewhere we were inspired from that kind of stuff. And Rajkumar had acted in LSD and stuff. So it was born very organically. We had a lot of footage, and Shahid we made on the editing table because we had no money to shoot the next schedule. And we were like, shit, we have to go and shoot how one guy blows himself up in Kashmir and how it changes things. But we cannot blow him up anymore. What do we do? So then we're sitting and writing, within the thing. Acha, isko yahan se connect karte hain. He actually doesn't have to see it. We don't have to have that beheading shot. We don't have to do this. So, then, okay, we'll just have a scene between the two friends sitting alone in silence. Yahan se shot nikal ke yahan dala. So the screenplay kind of was built like that. Taking within scenes, how to construct a courtroom scene where you've got your story going on and your dialogues that are important to be told, yet all this new stuff that actors have brought in. Sandwich, so then a sandwich that the lawyers telling, how to keep it. How to keep that the judge gets up and goes and is wearing chappals. So those I think are editing tricks, which we were able to employ and then complete the film in that manner.
अलीगढ़ की बात हो रही थी, and मैं खुद अलीगढ़ से हूँ. And I remember back then when this entire thing, and especially the death of the said professor happened, nobody would want to talk about. I was in my college during those days, like in 2009 or 10 it happened. मैं ये जानना चाहता हूँ during the entire, and I have seen Aligarh also as an audience, as an actor, and let's say as an acting teacher, I've seen film, and I've also understood their attempt to justify the perspective from which the professor wanted to speak something to the world, but unfortunately could not. That is something which is like my understanding of your film, your writing work upon it. तो एक तो मैं जानना चाहता हूँ क्या अलीगढ़ लिखने के दौरान आपको like normally it had happened, did you face any flack? And since it was something based upon a real event, so how different was it for you to walk upon this sensitive issue vis-a-vis something, let's say, a proper fiction or anything which is otherwise acceptable? Because the case of Professor Seros was never acceptable, at least in Aligarh. I am a writer myself, लेकिन जो stuff मैं लिखता हूँ, it's very 70ish. It's a proper family drama, the kind of stuff which we see in Pakistani dramas these days. तो जिन प्रोडक्शन हाउसेस को मैं पिच करता हूँ काम, even series also, let's say even feature length scripts also, I get appreciation. People say that you write good, but they say that it is not relevant in the times of today. And at this particular age and time of mine, I find it very difficult to transform myself. So some people have suggested that keep writing. That includes heavily my parents. And there are people who have very, very subtle manner said that you should change your style of writing. So these are the two things which I wanted from you being into the same line of business and kind of experienced also.
When we were telling Professor Siras's story, for me, there was really no, I didn't feel any fear, ke, what is one going to deal with if one is telling the story, because for me, there was no option. There was an opportunity to tell a story which we've not been able to tell in India. And there's a director who is willing to back it, and the producers like Eros International, the big producers. So half the battle was won. What you talk about, the atmosphere in Aligarh, is pretty much what I faced as well while researching the film, while talking to people. The different people that I met, including his colleagues, other professors in the university, couple of whom were very, very helpful and give us a lot of information and emotion, right? But they were like, "Mera naam mat lena. Don't do this, because I have to live here. So don't say I was involved." Then there were people who were very upset with us that we were supposed to shoot. We didn't shoot it in Aligarh finally, because I think 4 days before we arrived, the VC then, so he contacted us and says there was an incident of violence in the university recently. It had made news also. And we don't think that you will be safe here. So please don't shoot it here. When I tried to speak to Professor Siras's family, and the kind of opposition that I got from his own family was more than I got from Aligarh Muslim University. And you would think that the family would want to get justice for their brother-in-law, uncle. But these people were like, you are going to do exactly what the media has done with your film, is humiliate us further by saying that there was a gay in our family. So the understanding before we even made the film that, people see this word or this identity as a gali, as a bad word. It's humiliating for them. That's very hurtful, extremely hurtful. If that is your identity, and so either you have to be embarrassed of yourself, or you have to bottle it. But the brothers, the men especially, they even put a case against us to stop the film. Aligarh, the mayor of Aligarh banned the film in Aligarh, saying that why did you call it Aligarh? Kuch aur bulate hum maan lete. Aligarh kyun bola? Matlab you want to tarnish the name of Aligarh. So basically, homosexuality related to a place means tarnishing the name, right? Now, you can either feel attacked by this and, bow down, bow out, back out, or you can take it as a challenge to say, okay, no, this is all the more reason why we have to make the film at any cost. Because if in the film, and I don't know if you felt that too, our intention was never really to ridicule anybody. It was to understand that there's a innocent beating heart in this man. He is as human as you are. And there are many things that you might identify with him, which have nothing to do with his sexuality. That was the humanizing, right? So in spite of all this opposition, in spite of all of this, we changed names here, we did this here, we changed location, but we made the film. It's not even just for the sake of it, ki tum panga le rahe ho ya aisa. It's not that. It means that people are resisting dealing with something, and any person who understands even an iota of psychology will tell you that if you suppress things deep inside you, it creates disease and neurosis. It needs vent. So tell those stories. Yeah. Coming back to the second part of your question, I mean, there are two ways to answer it. One is, if you truly believe that those are the stories that need to be told, whether they're family dramas or whatever, you stay relentless at it till somebody comes in line and understands it. Today might not be your time, but when that time comes, when the people are ready for it, you are the most experienced. People already know कि तुमने इसको मतलब तुम तैयार हो इसके लिए. Also, I will say that an artist is only an artist, in my belief, if they are evolving. I don't think there is only this. Like even today, I say my stuff is based on true stories and whatever. This is what I've understood so far. But is it just this that I'm going to be for the rest of my life? I'm very sure about it. If I were to be so sure about it, I don't think I could call myself an artist, because I have to evolve, I have to grow, and I have to respond to what's happening in the world. Otherwise, you see, I'm just like, okay, I know, right? But I need to, and an artist, like, for example, I was one of the people that supported the telling of Kerala Story in cinemas. I went and saw the film. This has nothing to do with my politics. Where the film has been one-sided and done things that are, what do you say, insightful, inciting any kind of trouble, I've called it out, the one-tonedness of it. But the fact is that that story is a story that has really happened, whether it happened by 3 people or 30,000 people. In a democracy, it happens to 3 people, it's a real story. It has to be heard. So I feel like it's important for that story to be told, and yes, to be told well. But if nobody's telling them at all, somebody's going to tell it at some point in time. So to be open to new stories, new ideas, new perspectives is truly, I feel, the mark of an artist.